Once upon a time, in the ancient world, there lived a great teacher named Prajapati. He was wise beyond measure and known for his teachings about the self, the essence of being, pure consciousness, or the life force that is within every being. The self, he said, was synonymous with the name Brahman, the creator of all. One day, he proclaimed a profound truth: the self is pure. It is free from decay and death, hunger and thirst, sorrow and suffering. It desires and wills only what is good. Those who seek and realize the self fulfill all their desires and attain the supreme goal. These words reached the ears of two groups, the gods and the godless. Both were intrigued, for they sought to understand the self and achieve the fulfillment Prajapati described. Among the gods, Indra stepped forward, and among the godless, Virochana volunteered. Together, they approached Prajapati, each carrying fuel as a symbol of their willingness to serve and learn. For 32 years, they lived as his disciples, patiently awaiting his wisdom. At the end of this time, Prajapati asked them why they had come. They replied, "We have heard your teaching that the self is pure, fearless, and deathless. We wish to realize the self and attain the supreme goal." Prajapati began their instruction with a simple exercise. "When you look into another's eyes, what you see is the self," he said. "That is Brahman, the supreme reality." Indra and Virochana were curious. "What about our reflections in water or a mirror?" they asked. "It is the self you see in all these," Prajapati affirmed. He then instructed them to look at their reflections in a bowl of water. They did so and reported, "We see ourselves, even down to our hair and nails. Dress in your finest clothes and look again," he said. They obeyed, returning to him with the same observation. "That is the self," Prajapati declared. "It is fearless and deathless. That is Brahman." Satisfied with this answer, Virochana departed, convinced that the body itself was the self. He returned to the godless and taught them that preserving and adorning the body was the highest goal. They believed that indulging the senses would bring joy in this life and the next. Even today, people who lack faith and love are called godless, following Virochana's mistaken teaching. Indra, however, was not so easily convinced. As he journeyed back to the gods, he began to question. If the self is the body, he thought, it will be blind when the body is blind, lame when the body is lame, and perish when the body dies. This cannot be the supreme truth. He returned to Prajapati, seeking deeper understanding. Prajapati welcomed him back and invited him to stay for another 32 years. After this time, he taught Indra again. "That which moves about in joy in the dreaming state is the self," he said. "It is fearless and deathless. That is Brahman." Indra left, but once more doubts arose. In dreams, the self seems to suffer and even be slain, he thought. This knowledge is incomplete. He returned to Prajapati, who asked him to stay for another 32 years. This time, Prajapati taught him, when a person is in deep, dreamless sleep, free from all thoughts, that is the self. It is fearless and deathless. That is Brahman. Indra departed, but his doubts persisted. In dreamless sleep, there is no awareness of self or others. This state is too close to extinction to be the ultimate truth. Once more Indra returned, and this time Prajapati offered to teach him everything in just 5 more years. Indra agreed, and at last Prajapati revealed the highest truth. The body is perishable, he began, but within it dwells the imperishable self. The body experiences pleasure and pain, but those who identify with the self rise above these. They live in unshakable joy. The self is like the wind or lightning, formless, yet reaching the transcendent light in its true essence. It is not the body, but is bound to it for a time. like an ox to a cart. Whenever you see, hear, think, or feel, it is the self that perceives through the instruments of the senses. The self is pure consciousness, the eternal witness. Prajapati paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle before continuing, his voice carrying the depth of ages. The body, he began again, is a vessel, a temporary abode for the self. It is as a river, flowing, changing, and yet the water within it is the same, though the riverbed shifts with time. The body, like the river, is subject to the laws of nature, to decay, to birth, and to death. But the self is the river's source, the eternal spring that never dries. It is beyond time, untouched by the passing of seasons. The body is its instrument, like a musician playing a flute, but the self is the breath within, constant and unchanging. Indra, still uncertain, asked, if the self is beyond the body, how can it experience the world through it? Is the body merely an illusion? Prajapati smiled gently. The body is not an illusion, Indra, but a reflection of the deeper truth. It is the medium through which the self interacts with the world of forms. Think of the ocean and the waves. The ocean is vast, infinite, and still, but the waves rise and fall upon its surface. The waves are not separate from the ocean. They are the ocean in motion. Similarly, the self, in its pure form, is beyond all dualities. But when it interacts with the world, it takes on the form of the body, mind, and senses. It is not bound by them, but expresses through them. The self is the ocean, and the body, mind, and senses are the waves, ever changing, but never truly apart from the whole. Indra's brow furrowed. But how can the self remain untouched by suffering when the body is so vulnerable to pain, to loss? Prajapati's gaze deepened, his words becoming more profound. The self is not the experiencer of suffering, Indra. It is the witness. Suffering belongs to the body, to the mind, and to the senses. When the mind identifies with the body, it believes itself to be the one who suffers. But the self, the true essence, is like the sky. The sky is vast, unchanging, and unaffected by the clouds that pass through it. So too, the self is unaffected by the thoughts, emotions, or experiences that come and go. It is the eternal witness, observing the play of life without attachment. Indra's eyes widened, as if the light of understanding was beginning to dawn. So, the self is not bound by the cycles of birth and death? No, Prajapati replied softly. The self is beyond birth and death. Birth and death are phenomena of the body, the mind, and the senses. The self is not born, nor does it die. It is the eternal consciousness, the unchanging essence that pervades all things. It is the light of awareness that illuminates the world, yet it itself remains unscathed, unbound by the cycles of creation and destruction. Like the sun, it rises and sets, but its nature is constant, beyond the reach of time. Indra sat in silence, contemplating the depth of Prajapati's words. Prajapati continued, when you know the self, you transcend all limitations. You are no longer bound by the desires and fears of the body, for you know that the self is the source of all joy and peace. The self is the ultimate reality, the Brahman, the unchanging truth behind the world of appearances. It is the root of all creation, the substratum upon which the universe rests. Everything you see, touch, and experience is an expression of this one truth, this one consciousness. Indra's heart swelled with awe. So, the self is the very essence of all things? Yes, Prajapati affirmed. It is the essence of all things, and yet it is beyond all things. It is both immanent and transcendent. It is the world, and it is beyond the world. It is the unmanifest potential and the manifest reality. To realize the self is to realize the unity of all things, to see the world as a reflection of the divine, to know that all is one. Indra bowed deeply, his mind at peace, his doubts dissolved. I understand now, Master. The self is not something to be attained, but something to be realized. It is the truth within, ever present, waiting to be known. Prajapati nodded, his eyes filled with compassion. Yes, Indra, the self is always with you, always within you. It is the eternal light that shines in the darkness of ignorance. To realize it is to awaken to your true nature, to live in harmony with the universe, to transcend the limitations of the body and mind. It is the path to liberation, to the supreme goal of life. Indra left with the knowledge of the self, carrying the wisdom that transcended the fleeting world of forms. He understood that the self was not the body, nor the mind, nor the senses. It was the eternal, unchanging essence. And so, as you walk your own path, remember, the self is not something you need to find. It is already there, within you, waiting to be realized. All that is required is the courage to look within, to question, and to awaken to the truth of your being. If the story resonated with you, and if you seek more wisdom on the path of self-discovery and spiritual truth, be sure to subscribe to this channel, like, comment, and share with others who are on their own journey toward enlightenment. Join the community and let's explore these deep truths together.